As we left off last time, Jesus prayed, an act of absolute humility and surrender to the Father's will, where Jesus begged and pleaded to escape the coming execution, but yielded to God's will instead. Now we see a picture of torches, shining swords surrounding Jesus and his disciples, the crowd being led by none other than Judas. He came not to identify Jesus. The mob already knew what he looked like. Judas's role was probably just to pinpoint exactly where Jesus would be. In the enemy's hands, Judas was a crucial tool. He was like a guidance system for a very dangerous weapon. The disciples defended Jesus against the arrest, but this would prove to be futile efforts, however. The time had come for darkness to take over. Peter swings his sword and cuts off a soldier's ear, but Jesus heals the ear and once again shows an attitude of submission. They take him. Jesus is now being led to his trial, one that would prove to be the most unjust trial in all of human history, one where Jesus would be paraded around like trash and assumed guilty before the trial even begins, one where they offer to either let Jesus go or let an actual criminal and murderer go free, and they would choose the murderer. As they are taking Jesus, Peter is following closely behind. He's afraid. Where is the same courage that stood up to Roman soldiers? However, we shouldn't judge Peter too harshly just yet. Sometimes we all find ourselves following Jesus from a safe distance. So what is the fear that is holding us back? Where is our courage? Jesus' trial begins Thursday night. The first of the unfair instances is an interrogation by an ex-high priest. There, Jesus is questioned about his teaching. Jesus tells the interrogator to go ask the people Jesus spoke to. Then another person slaps Jesus in the face for no reason, simply because of his anger that Jesus was responding in a way that they did not like. The next incident in Jesus' trial is another round of interrogation, and they called false witnesses to testify against Jesus. However, the testimonies were all conflicting. Anybody should have been able to see that these were false witnesses, but they didn't care. They just wanted to see Jesus die. Peter is outside, still maintaining his safe distance. Then a girl notices him and asks if he was with Jesus. Peter denies this, still being controlled by fear. Peter would go on to deny Jesus 2 more times, and once Peter makes that last denial, Jesus turns. He faces Peter, and Peter remembers that Jesus had just told him that he would deny him 3 times before the night was over. After Jesus' first trial, he is then beaten and mocked. They blindfolded Jesus and said, "Prophesy, who hit you?" Jesus, the God of the universe, is facing direct attacks against who he is, and it's humiliating and painful. Jesus faces another trial where he is again pronounced guilty, but the Sanhedrin did not have the authority to be able to execute Jesus. So they took him to the Roman governor over Judea, Pilate. The governor is convinced of Jesus' innocence, and he attempts to gain Jesus' freedom. And so he makes an offer that he thought would guarantee Jesus' release. See, it was the custom at the time during the festival. The governor would release one prisoner of the people's choice. He presents Jesus and a man named Barabbas. On one hand, you have an innocent man being wrongfully accused, and on the other, you have a murderer and revolutionary. And much to surprise, the people chose Barabbas. Pilate literally washes his hands of the situation and says, "I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility." Pilate knows that Jesus is innocent, but he had the authority to release Jesus anyway. Pilate chose to save his own skin. His job was dependent on how much his people liked him. So Pilate lets the people do what they want with Jesus, and that's exactly what they do. Jesus is beaten with a whip with broken glass and other materials. The whip was designed to latch onto skin and tear. Before long, Jesus' back was ripped apart. They placed a crown of thorns on his head just to further mock the claim that Jesus made that he was ruler. They then made Jesus carry his own cross around 300 meters uphill to a place that overlooked the city. This place was used to parade the crucified as an example to the rest of the city, as if a "watch out because this could be you" moment. Once Jesus finally arrives at the top of the hill, he is barely clinging to life. He can't stand on his own anymore. They lay him on a plank of wood he just carried and placed a sign over him saying that Jesus was the King of the Jews. This is it. The humiliation, the picture of Jesus lying on the cross with no one there to help him, the absolute agony that he is feeling from the beating earlier that day, and the exhaustion from him carrying the cross. Jesus' time has come. The God of the universe lay on a cross, helpless and suffering, and with the swinging of a hammer, Jesus' fate is sealed as it makes contact with the first nail.